Hello and welcome to the Providence College Podcast. I'm Liz Kay. In June, Providence College welcomed many members of the class of 2026 at First Days in Friartown, an introduction to campus life for students and their families. We decided to highlight a parent session hosted by Nedzer Erilus, Director of Residence Life and Housing, and Tiffany Gaffney, Associate Dean of Students. Erilus and Gaffney are both members of PC's class of 2003. They share valuable insights and expertise about important conversations to have with college students before move-in day in August. If you missed the session last month or just need a refresher, enjoy this discussion now.
Thank you. How did your session go earlier?
Ask them. Thank you. Hey.
There's a lot of pressure on me. If he doesn't do well, then you won't be happy for this session. So that's good. No. Well, so since you already know Ned, I'll introduce myself. My name is Tiffany Gaffney, Associate Dean of Students here at Providence College. I am also a member of the class of 2003. I may have had a higher place in the GPA in graduating class.
I was more involved.
We were both RAs. No, we're not usually this competitive, but we've done this session together so many times it has evolved.
Ramps up.
Yeah, it does every time.
Yeah. And this is the last one that we're doing in person.
We got to leave it all on the table here.
All of it.
But so member of the class of 2003. So I also came back and did my MBA here, and then I've worked here as a staff member for 18 years in student affairs. And so I like to say that I bleed black and white. I absolutely love Providence College. We're not a perfect place. No place is perfect. But I think we're a community full of people who are really good at what they do, who really care about our students, who are really passionate and intense about the student experience. And so, you know, I think we work really hard to be the best place that we can be. And so that's why I stick around.
Tiffany mentioned the word intense. I like to speak on that a little bit. It's oftentimes we get the question, you know, what is it about PC that makes PC special, right? What is it about us? What is it about Friartown? What is it about this community that makes us so special? And I think, well, I hope that over the course of today, over the course of this conversation today as well, this session, you'll see it's an intensity. We are intense. We have an intensity about how we care for your students, that ethic of care and how it's expressed, and how invested we are in your student success. We are very intense in that regard. And I think that's really what separates us from every other institution, you know, imaginable. Right? Really intense. And you'll find that that's across the entire campus, right? Faculty, staff like myself and Tiffany, among students, you'll hear more about this over the course of today, but we're trying to cultivate a community of care, right? A community of care and support, right? But you'll see there's an intensity that kind of energizes the work that we do here. It's really special.
Yeah. And so I have 4 boys. I have 4 sons. The oldest just graduated from 8th grade. He's going to high school. And I'm a basket case. So I have a lot of, empathy for all of you. I don't know how you're here. And, you know, I only have him for 4 more years. Oh my gosh, I'll cry. I'm going to cry again thinking about it. Okay. And so, you know, we both know that, despite all of our experience, there's no better experience than actually being a parent and parenting a child through college, right? And so I'm just curious, and I don't know, Ned, if you were at the session earlier, I know Jackie always does her thing where she asks, I'm just curious, who had the most number of students go through college? Was it, you've had 4, is this your 4th? Oh, good for you. Yeah,
wow.
Oh, and this is your 4th also. Oh, and your 4th, and your 4th. Wow. So if you all want to come up, we'll switch places. No, but seriously, we know that it's not easy, right? College is not easy, and their life is not easy, and there's a lot of, I think, a lot of excitement, right? Your students are probably in a place of excitement, a lot of hope. They're really looking forward to a lot of the positives and a lot of the things they've been waiting for since they knew what college was. But we have to recognize that college is also full of really difficult experiences. experiences. It's a transition for sure. Even the most well-adjusted student, the most prepared student is going to experience challenges and encounter difficulty and need some help along the way. And that's normal and that's okay. But we do want to take some time during this program, and that's what this session is about, is to really kind of identify and own what some of these intentional difficult conversations will be, both difficult conversations that we will plan to have, but also potentially difficult conversations that we might expect could happen. And so our goal, to just continue the theme from this morning, parents as partners, is that we need to partner together in these conversations in support of your students. Yes. And so we're going to do today a little bit differently than we've done the last sessions. So we had the great opportunity to hear from parents in some of our previous sessions. They shared some difficult experiences, difficult conversations they had with their students, their older children who had gone through college. And I think, we really want to make sure we touch on some very key themes. So we're going to share with you some of these conversations because it gives us an opportunity to also highlight what we offer here at the college and how we're going to approach these conversations. Let's start with the alcohol. Everyone's favorite topic.
Dive right in.
We did just eat lunch in the bar downstairs. No.
That's true.
Okay, so there was a mom who shared one of the earlier days about her daughter. So she had she said she had a phone call at 3 a.m. and she was being notified by the school that her daughter, who goes to another institution, had been arrested for underage possession of alcohol. And we said, that's very brave of her to share. But we think it was a really important experience to kind of talk about. Most students are not going to be arrested for underage possession of alcohol. We also know that a third of our students come in and they don't drink. They identify as non-drinkers. And so not everybody drinks at college, but the reality is some students do. And unless your students are hockey players, they're probably under 21, right? There was a dad sitting at the bar. I was eavesdropping, and his kid's a hockey player. I don't know if you want to own yourself, but maybe not here, maybe not a D1 player here. But anyway, and so, the reality is that underage drinking, it's illegal. So we don't condone it, we don't permit it, we don't tolerate it. But we do think that it also can be really difficult conversation to have. And so we want to spend a little time talking about, what you can expect from us, but also what we hope we can expect from you. So following that example of that mom and that student, we do sometimes call parents in the middle of the night. You will hear from one of 4 people. If you get that phone call, it will be myself, it'll be Nedzer, it'll be Dr. Stephen Sears, or it'll be Dean Taiwo Adefijimon Wuba from the Dean of Students Office. And so we will call you if there is a health or safety emergency, if your underage student has been arrested by the police, you will be notified by us. As soon as we know about it, you will know about it. And that could be at 3 a.m., right? Yeah, sometimes it's at 6 p.m., but it could be at 3 a.m. Yep. And so, you will get that call from us. But, a lot of students who do choose to drink will never be arrested. They won't be transported to the hospital for intoxication. But there are still students who may experience harm from alcohol and alcohol use. And so over the summer, one of the things your students will be required to do is to complete the Safe Colleges Alcohol and Other Drug Program. We're hoping that you won't pull up a chair and watch it over their shoulder with them. But we do also hope that when they're done, when they've completed the program, that it creates an opportunity for you to say, let's talk about that. What did you learn? What did the program say? What are some of the questions that you have? When they get here on August 25th, right? Move-in day, August 25th. Yep. In that program, we will continue to talk to them about it. We will have in-person educational conversations with them by orientation group. The orientation leaders will have conversations with them about how to socialize in the social scene, including talking about alcohol. the RAs in the floor meetings.
Yep.
We'll talk about alcohol and the alcohol policies. Our approach is a real harm reduction approach. We know if we talk about abstinence from alcohol, we might as well not be talking. It is not an effective means of reducing underage alcohol use or problematic drinking. And so what we will do is say, if you choose to drink, how might you reduce your risk of harm? But also, and again, because we know we have a third of our students who won't drink at all, we will also say, and if you see someone else who needs help, what to do? We do, Nedzer talked about our culture of care. I mean, we will drill into your students. You're never alone in Friartown. That's a catchphrase that we will use a lot. You're never alone in Friartown. And so, we have an alcohol amnesty policy. If a student has been drinking underage and they see someone else, maybe it's their roommate, maybe it's a friend, maybe it's just somebody else they see who needs help, right? Medical attention, they can call for help and not be afraid of getting in trouble. Because what's more important, that we hold them accountable for violating policy or that we get the student help? So we have an amnesty policy. We want to make sure students know about it because we really do mean that. It is much more important, the health and safety of our students, than making sure that we hold them accountable for policy violations. And so on a similar vein, at orientation, they will also participate in a bystander program. And, that idea that you can be, a crime can happen, somebody can be in danger and need help in a room full of 100 other people, and no one will call for help because everyone assumes someone else will do it. And so we will talk with your students very plainly about that, and very clearly that our expectation is that we all have a duty to each other, and that if you see something, say something. Ned, I just went on my soapbox and talked about alcohol. What would you want to add to that?
I think just to build off of the community of care aspect, we're cultivating this in the residence halls as well, right? And one of the main ways that we do this, or not main ways, but one of the ways that we do this is by helping students engage in conversations with one another about those expectations as well, right? And so we mentioned this at the last session, but there is a roommate agreement, right, that students will be completing with one another, right, in their rooms. And that agreement allows them to really review, discuss, dialogue about expectations, to be had in that space. Right? How are we wanting to invite friends over, if at all, and when, right? When do we want to go to sleep? How do we like to study, et cetera? But it's really the first time a student's really engaged with that conversation about boundaries oftentimes, right? Oftentimes I've never thought about this before. What are my expectations about other folks visiting in the room, or what happens in the room, or the usage of my stuff and things like this, right? And so this intersects with alcohol a lot because, well, they got to drink somewhere. And that conversation really helps them frame, again, the kind of social space, right? We know our resident rooms also, exist as for our students.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. I just lost the thought I was going to have. There was another parent who shared something about alcohol. Oh, no, I lost it again. While you were talking, I wasn't listening. I was thinking about what I needed to say next.
Yeah.
And I stopped thinking about that and listened to you and lost what I was going to say. Oh, this is what it was. Okay, I remembered. And so actually it wasn't something that a parent shared. I was thinking about a parent, as a parent, if you've sent 4 kids off to college, you probably have had the alcohol conversation many times and could teach all the rest of us how to have it. But if you are, in case you are a parent who maybe have never had this conversation before, or you have, but it's just more uncomfortable for you, we have resources available for you. And so you will get in the coming, week or so, an email, a follow-up email about this orientation program, and it will include links to information about how to talk to your college student about alcohol. So again, if you are good and you know how to have that conversation, we won't be offended if you don't click the link, but if you're somebody who would like a little help on figuring out how to frame that conversation, we will be sending all of you that information. It's really important that you understand that if you talk, they will listen.
Yeah.
They will pretend they are not listening. They will tell you you don't know what you're talking about, but they are listening. And we know all of the research, they are listening. They just don't want you to think they are.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and just a small point as well. Like Tiffany mentioned, 1 in 3 students are not drinking, right? And sometimes you might hear from your student, or they might perceive on social media.
no, you definitely will hear from your
Your student, and you would probably see on social media as well a completely different narrative or depiction of that story, right?
Everyone's drinking.
The feeling
That's what
that
you're going to hear.
everyone is drinking. All right, everyone is drinking. Everyone is drinking. That's simply not true, right? And so part of our role too is enabling students to connect with one another, but also to access those campus resources, events, programs, et cetera, that are happening, that other students are going to, that they may not perceive are going to because of social media, as we've discussed before, right? But this is a very real thing, and so we engage that as well.
Yeah. You talked about social media earlier.
We did, yeah, we talked about social media earlier.
Did you talk about how roommates will get into fights in the same room, but not talking to each other? They're on social media at each other?
We talked about weirdness
Yeah.
and discomfort.
I will digress for 1 second and say I worked in residence life years ago, and I had a student in my office really upset because she had a roommate conflict. Her RA couldn't mediate, the hall director couldn't mediate. Ended up in my lap, and I said, "Well, so you've got this list of things you're upset with your roommate about. Did you tell her?" "Well, I texted her," and I said, "Well, why you didn't?" Do you not see her in the room? Oh no, they were in the room, in their desks, facing opposite walls, fighting by text.
Yeah.
And that's a true story.
I believe it.
So
Yep.
anyway,
I believe it.
I digress. Okay, so what about the West Coast?
Oh, yeah.
You want to go tell
Sure,
that one?
Sure. So we had another set of parents, particularly this was a father, and they had a son go to a school on the West Coast, right? So already we understand, they're from the East Coast, their son went to a school on the West Coast, so there's a distance factor, right, where the father or the mother, the parents could not visit, their son regularly, right? So that's a kind of a exacerbating factor, right? So the son went to school on the West Coast. The son really wanted to get involved in Greek life, right? Really wanted to get into a fraternity.
We don't have Greek life.
We don't have
FYI.
Greek life here, no. But we do have rugby. No, bad. That's bad. Bad. That's bad. That's bad. I played rugby. Went to the West Coast. Really wanted to get into, get involved in Greek life. Had kind of an idea of what kind of fraternities he wanted to join. Did not get into any of them. None of them, right? And so the father was very good about connecting with his son. So they spoke regularly. I want to say weekly, maybe more than that, but there were regular interactions, communication that the father had with the son, a lot of FaceTime, a lot of phone calls, right? The father had no idea that the son was...
Well, the son kept saying, "Oh, I'm fine. I'm doing great."
Correct. So someone would communicate he was fine, he was doing great, nothing was wrong, he's happy, he's settled, all that kind of stuff, right? Father had no reason to believe otherwise, right, whatsoever. And again, the key part here too is that they were communicating like via FaceTime. So he was seeing him, they're engaging one another, right? Again, frequently and regularly. And later on, as the year progressed, the father discovers, I forget how.
So at the end of the semester, when he went to pick him up, also discovered failing everything,
Yeah.
hadn't been going to class.
Correct.
Basically hiding out in his room.
Yep. Complete disengagement from campus and social life, failing academically, and very much just in dire straits, so to speak. And the father felt he was a bit at a loss. He had said, if I just keyed up, my attentiveness somehow, maybe I would have picked this up sooner or somehow discovered this or observed this in some other way. And the reality is that's not true. I told that father, we told him, you did everything you could. Like you did what you should have done as a parent, with the frequency of communication, the asking questions. Sometimes you can't help what your student or how your student's going to respond or engage you in those interactions. They might, present a picture of, things being fine and great. Maybe they don't want to burden you. They don't want to stress you out. They don't want to, induce any anxiety on your end, right? They know you want them to succeed and be happy and do well and be well. And so, there are a host of reasons why they may not share or reveal what's actually going on. But the key part here for us at PC is that we do and are committed to cultivating this community of care, right? Where everybody's participating and observing one another, right? And sharing those observations with folks like RAs, folks like Tiffany and myself, faculty, right? We'll share the observations as well, right? Other staff. The reassurance here is that even if you may miss from those conversations or interactions with your student what might actually be going on or something more concerning going on, those behaviors are being observed elsewhere, right? In this community of care, right? This culture of care we're creating, right? They're being observed elsewhere. So somebody, again, faculty, staff, RAs, et cetera, will observe that and will, respond accordingly.
Yeah, so this story kind of highlights a few things that we think are really important to mention. I don't want to talk about it yet, but I'm going to say expectations. We do remind me to come back to expectations. But so and we don't know what that institution, what they knew, what they understood. We don't know any of that. How we would hope this would work here is, so we have a care team, and so the care team is about a dozen administrators from across campus. Both Nedzer and I sit on this team, but it is staff members from academic affairs, from the counseling center, the health center, the chaplain's office, from community standards, from public safety. I always forget athletics, from athletics. And so we meet regularly, and we spend a lot of time training our community about how to recognize signs of distress and then how to make referrals to the care team. And so we work with faculty, staff, and students to make sure they understand, again, to repeat, culture of care, see something, say something, how to recognize when someone needs help, but really how to recognize the signs of distress and then where to go with that. Now, as you can probably expect, most of the referrals to the care team come from RAs and from public safety. They are basically 24/7 operations. They have staff that are patrolling campus and the residence halls and who generate reports. So that's not a surprise. But a third of our referrals come from members of the community. So we will get reports from faculty. Sometimes they look like, Jane is in my intro to politics class and stopped coming and has missed the last 4 weeks of class, and I've emailed her and she hasn't responded. If that happens, what we do is we reach out to Jane. We may find out that Jane was going to drop the class and just didn't follow through when submitting the paperwork. Shocker, right? The student had to drop off paperwork to finish and didn't follow through, right? So, at worst, the student didn't really need help other than a reminder to drop the form off. But maybe we find out that Jane is really struggling, that maybe Jane had, some kind of interaction with another student in the class and she doesn't want to go into the same classroom as that student ever again. Or maybe it's that Jane is starting to feel depressed and exhibiting signs of depression and is having trouble getting out of bed. Maybe it's that Jane is actually not feeling well. Maybe she's got some medication or insomnia or something. She's sleeping through the alarm in the morning, right? But we don't know until we ask, and we can't ask if we don't know that she's missing class. So we talk to professors. We go to new faculty orientation, and we talk about how to recognize signs of distress and how to make referrals. Sometimes we hear from faculty that a student missed class and then did email the faculty member, and in that email disclosed something challenging, something that the professor thinks the student might need some help with. Sometimes we find the student actually is plugged into all the right resources, doesn't really need help, but sometimes we find that the student really needs someone to help them figure out how to overcome whatever it is they're struggling with. We also get referrals from students, from roommates or friends. Sometimes those are things like sharing behaviors that kind of speak towards disordered eating. It could be someone sharing concerns about their friend's relationship and some things, there are signs they're seeing about that being an unhealthy relationship. Really anything you can think of, probably we've received a referral. But we also get referrals from parents. And actually this year we got a referral from a high school guidance counselor who had stayed connected to a student who was a freshman. And that guidance counselor noticed a change in the student's demeanor and attitude towards school. And the guidance counselor said, I don't know what this could be about, but this isn't the same person I was working with 6 months ago. And so thought somebody at the school should know. And so we spend a lot of resources educating the campus community, faculty, staff, and students about the care team, what we do, how to recognize signs of distress, and how to report. So what we would hope is that if that institute, we had been that West Coast institution, that someone, even though the parents, they didn't have an idea something was wrong because their student was saying everything was fine, but that somebody on our campus would have observed that something was wrong and that they would all know what to do if they did. Yeah. So that's something that we stress and strategize, but expectations. Did you want to add to that before I go?
Yeah. Also, I think something you should know is we will know your students, right? I think sometimes you might feel, or you might be compelled to feel that, this is one student out of 100 students or 200 students or 1,000 students. What are the odds that they would know or care or even be able to identify who this student is? That's not true. We really get to know your students, even at our level. And I can assure you that with all these different mechanisms of observation in place, we will have already established some level of connection with your student some way along the line, right? Whether it's between faculty, staff, RA, et cetera, right? And so just know that your student's not anonymous here, but on a number here, that we will know who your students are and work to support them as best as we're able to.
But no, we'll never know them as well as you do. So the other thing I would say is that if you think something is wrong, call us. Yeah. And if you don't know where to go, who to call, Dean of Students Office, start there. Mm-hmm. We may not be ultimately the people who are going to help, but we know who the people are who would help. So if you don't know where to go, if you're not sure who to talk to, and you think something's wrong, call us. Yeah. We want to know. But expectations, I didn't forget. Okay. So the other thing that story sort of highlights, and this definitely resonates for us in a residence life background, but so much of the turmoil and the adjustment process in the fall is going to come from expectations, failure to meet expectations, and your student's experience is largely going to fail to meet their expectations. And the reason why is because there are so many expectations about what college is like. Mm-hmm. So as an example, your students, many of your students, never want to say all, but many of your students have this idea about what orientation is going to feel like, right? August 25th, you're going to drop me off and it's going to be so fun. Mm-hmm. You're going to drop me off and I'm going to just feel free and I'm going to have all this responsibility and it's going to be the best thing ever. And when on August 25th you go to get in the car to leave, they're going to be like, oh no, I don't want you to leave. I'm sad. I'm scared. And they will immediately assume not that that's normal, but that means they've made a bad choice, right? That they actually, Providence wasn't where they should be. Providence isn't the right place. I'm not ready for this. When in reality, it's just the normal, emotions that go with this kind of a transition, right? So that's the first, just day one, they will fail to meet their own expectations. And then the second thing that will fail to meet their expectations is their roommate. Pretty much. Yeah. They all think, guaranteed right now, they all think that their roommate is going to be their best friend for life. Yeah. You're laughing because you know, right? Right? And so, one of the hardest things for them to understand is that the best roommate is someone who's a really good, compatible living partner,
yes,
not a best friend. So if you imagine your student and their best friend, I bet several of you are like, that would be a train wreck if they live together, right? One is neat, one is messy. Opposites attract, I don't know. But like, they think this has to be immediately a deep connection, soulful connection, that they are going to be best friends, and that, they imagine what that relationship is going to be like, and it is not going to meet their expectations. 99.9% of your students, it will not meet their expectations. That doesn't mean it's not a good situation, but there will be emotional angst that comes with that, right? And, and so, I mean, those are just two examples, but there was a mom, sorry, we hadn't planned to tell this story, but there was a mom who, oh shoot, again, my memory is better than it looks today. But there was a mom, major change, who was sharing about, the daughter it was almost, I think, all the way through freshman year, finally admitted to mom that she was kind of failing her classes. And I think she was like, a biology major, and, mom was in the sciences in her career. And the mom was like, I didn't know, like, it got this bad. You're like telling me you're going to fail your classes. There's no time left in the year to salvage this, and I wish you had told me sooner. And she didn't want to disappoint her mom. So sometimes it's not just their own expectations, it's also their perception of yours, right? I'm not saying that mom was putting any pressure on her daughter to be a bio major, but the daughter certainly thought that it would disappoint her mom if she wasn't, right? And I guess moral of the story was the daughter switched to like theology major and like knocked it out of the park academically and thrived, right? And so there are so many examples of where the expectations that they have and the pressure that is often really only self-imposed kind of becomes a barrier, but really you can see it may take some digging through what looks like some real emotional turmoil before you figure out, or we can figure out, what the root of the issue is. But we are committed to working with you and your student through the tears to figure it out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think too, you'll often hear the term or the phrase to sit in discomfort, sitting in discomfort. And we try to actually encourage students to move through discomfort, right? Move through discomfort. Expect the discomfort, expect it, and move through it, right? And so these are some of the ways that we try and cultivate agency in the student to become aware of their situation, to move through it, take action, right? There are steps that can be taken, there are resources we can connect you to, but don't just sit in it, move in it, right? So we use this language a lot with students as well.
We didn't do a good job on time. We have a lot to cover in the next 10 minutes, including questions, but we do, okay.
Go for it.
So I do want to mention the two other things they'll have to do over the summer, because I think there are also opportunities for you all to have conversations with them that are really important before they come August 25th that we'll pick up and continue. So over the summer, your students will also be required to take the Cognito mental health at-risk student online module. And again, I really like this one. There's like avatars, or I don't know, it's like fake people on the screen, and there's students who are in distress, and your student gets to act and make decisions for how the other avatar is going to engage the student in distress. And so, there'll be like a scene, and then there will be, say, 3 options for your student's avatar to respond, and they get to pick how they respond, and then the scenario plays out based on their actions. And then the system will actually narrate back and say, all right, here's the good things about responding that way, but here are some maybe reasons why you should have responded differently. But they can also back up and try out different options. And there's a few different scenarios. And so we really mean it when we say we want to teach them how to recognize signs of distress, and then what they can do to help or get the students help. So that will be required. The other one that will be required is the Safe Colleges Intimate Partner Violence Prevention program. And again, for all of these, we hope you won't sit over their shoulder watching, but we do really hope you'll talk with them about it. It's really important when we talk about, sexual violence prevention, most students are not going to encounter that kind of a situation. Some students will, but some students will also have friends who do. And so it's really important that we talk about it. It's really important that we help students, really kind of figure out with their own agency how they can be part of a solution of preventing, but also in the event that something happens, what to do. If something happens to them, what to do, and if something happens to someone they care about, what to do. There's a lot of resources on campus that are available to them. And so, that module over the summer is going to start that conversation. It is by no means going to fix the issue for, our campus. And so what we're hoping is that at the very least, if that's not a conversation that you all have already had, that it's an opportunity to start that conversation for you with your student, and to really spend some time between now and August 25th, kind of talking about sexual decision-making, talking about decision-making around alcohol, kind of talking about, we had one parent say earlier in the program about, he didn't want to get into what the situation was with the student, but that he found that he was having this conversation with a student about some behavior that they both never thought would have happened. That he wasn't the kind of person who would, do something like that. And it really gave us an opportunity, I think, to say that, between now and the 25th of August, spending time talking with your student about who they are, right? Like how they occupy space, how they interact with people, how they treat people, what decisions they make, like who they are. But who they say they are. Like if somebody says to you, who are you? What kind of person are you? What kind of student are you? And that who they are and who they would say they are close to the same. And that they never lose sight of also who they want to be. And if there is, when those are different answers, who I am, who I would say I am, and who I want to be, when those are different, there's dissonance, there's disconnect, right? And then students may find themselves in a difficult situation and go, but I'm not the kind of person who'd be involved in that, or I'm not the kind of person who, would say that, or, would be involved. But they are. And because it's not, they're not necessarily thinking really intentionally and deliberately and thoughtfully about how they are engaging their place in this community. And so, maybe using the opportunity for, whether it's through these required online programs as sort of the occasion to start those conversations, or whether it's you've all been having these conversations and you can, you just have the summer to continue them, that really helps us because we will continue these conversations with them in August and throughout the year. But again, we will be much more effective if we are messaging something they've already been hearing from all of you. And if when we talk about it, they hear your voice and the things that you had said to them, because when you talk, they listen. Yeah. I didn't mean to just rush through the end, but we now have 5 minutes for questions. We've run late every day though, so take your time.
So I can't speak for everyone else, but I'll speak for my daughter and myself. You keep talking about having these conversations. The teens don't talk to you. You cannot have a conversation with them. If I try to have a conversation with my daughter, she'll just sit on the couch, pout, put her head down and say, I know, we don't need to talk about this. So I can't penetrate that head of hers. I can't get through, I can't talk to her. She knows everything. So I would relinquish that to you.
We're going to have to talk about what it means to be a partner. No. Yeah, that's great. That actually sounds like my 14-year-old son, right? He knows everything, right? You're singing everyone's story right now. Yeah. It's funny because I do, right? Like I have 4 boys, and again, my oldest is 14, right? But my 12-year-old and my 14-year-old could not be more different. My 14-year-old, I mean, I might have been the last person to know he had a girlfriend, right? Like he doesn't tell me anything. That Life 360 app is the best thing ever, right? Whereas my 12-year-old tells me things, I have to only hope he tells me when we're in the car because I'm driving and he can't see my face. And he's telling me things and I can't control, right? And so kids are so different. Your students are so different. And so I don't know how to get your daughter to listen to you. I don't. But I do think that even if she's not engaging you, she is hearing you. She is hearing you. And some of the difficulty, like you all clearly have had more life experience than your students have had. You have context for the stuff you're talking about. If you try to have a conversation with her about a college party with alcohol, she doesn't know what that means. You might, I mean, I'm not suggesting you went to college parties, but you might know what that means, right? And so you have context, she doesn't have the context yet. And that is, there's no fixing that. So she doesn't think she needs to know it. She thinks she already knows everything she needs to know. You know she doesn't. So you say it, she doesn't want to be listening, she's hearing it, and when she's here and we continue the conversation, it will start to click. What our hope is that we're giving them information they don't need yet. But we want them to have it the moment they step into a situation where they need it. And so all we can do is give them everything that we can, and in the hopes that they are able to connect the dots and say, this is what they're talking about, and so here's what I need to do and how I want to handle it. But in addition to just what we're saying, we will send, again, we have resources. So there's the how to talk to your college students about alcohol, but then there's also information from, I always get it wrong, but it's the National Institute of something health, something about, I know. It'll be in the email. About, how to also talk to your students about sexual violence prevention, sexual decision-making in college. And, these are resources that we're not necessarily giving you to pass on to your student, but we're giving to you for you to kind of review and decide what might work for you and your student. But know that no matter how imperfectly you do it, because none of us are, right? I started this by saying Providence is not a perfect place. No, perfection is not the goal. However imperfectly you do it, that you do it in whatever version works for you.
Thank you for listening to the Providence College Podcast. Episodes are available in all of the usual places, as well as the college's YouTube channel and on your smart speaker. For producer Chris Judge, I'm Liz Kay. Until next time.